the latest descant of my brain schematics. Try and follow it tonight, and let me refer to a local and a universal brain. And you might care to note on your own, they're not synonymous, but you might care to note that there is a direct connection between what I'm going to be referring to as the local and universal brain and that which I referred to in the past as primary and secondary activities. Since I made them up, if I say there's a connection, you can bet on it. And there is, as you might guess from the last few nights segueing into this, there is also a connection between what I've been referring to as the dry brain and the wet brain. But since I have also of late referred to a local, fragmented, personalized reality, that is the reality that everyone else talks about, except when they're trying to extricate themselves from some acrid position, trying to put the onus back on someone else and say, don't you realize, can't you face reality? And that's when they're trying to change the brain chemistry of someone else to look inside of your own wet brain. But other than that, the reality that everyone accepts, the one they think about, the one they speak of, is a local reality as opposed to a universal reality. And don't worry, any of you who still have such held over worries, if you ever had them, of some kind of philosophical or, God forbid, some metaphysical or mystical notion that ordinary humans are in some way cursed with a limited, subjective, crude, flawed, although I've said all those things, distorted reality, and then there's this other great reality, but that in some way it is being hidden, and it's only available to those initiated or blessed or on some kind of strange dope that most of us can't get our hands on. It's not that. There is a universal reality, which I gave you a fair description, would be at least at the three-dimensional level, if this were possible, and I can make it possible verbally, it would be all local realities put together. In the same way that you could say the dream that is genetically implanted in man, that there could be some perfected or some better model of man than us, or than you, would be if you took all humans, every one of them, I mean every one. You could not select and leave out one or two as culls or that didn't belong there. Take them all, and if you melted them down and poured them in any kind of mold, if you just put them all together, they would spell mother. They would spell the realization of that genetic dream, that suspicion. Right. In a non-exceptional way, at the 3D level, what I mean by universal reality would be, it'd still be limited, but in a three-dimensional sense, if you took everyone's local reality and put it together. Now is everyone back up to speed? So now I wanted to extend it and use it in reference to the brain itself. And of course the function of the brain, intelligence. So now has everyone got, some of you know how to do this. When I say local brain, you be aware of the fact that there is a connection between local brain and secondary activities, but don't think it, and don't say it. And not only do not say to yourself, secondary activities, connected, don't say connected. Because if you say connected, you've already crimped the connection by identifying it. And when I say local brain, not only remember, but don't think, neuralize, be aware of the fact that there is a connection between that and secondary activities, and there is a connection between that and the dry brain. And when I say universal brain, there's a connection between that and primary activities and the wet brain. Now we're really up to speed, or else extremely confused. Trying to keep that in mind, local brain and universal brain have, I hope you will see, distinct and peculiar characteristics. The universal brain is the basis of all singular human pleasure, which we'll get to in a minute while I point out to you. The singular human, and the kinds that are not verbally, not laterally reversible, the kinds of pleasures such as sex when you want it, such as eating when you're hungry, such as resting when you're tired. Other than those, and getting dry when you're wet and warm when you're cold. Other than that, all other pleasures are local. But the distinct peculiarity about local brain is this, and no one's aware of it, and there is a pragmatic, immediate use if you can arrange your own brain chemistry, if you can find the right kind of keys for the right locks or vice versa, to see this. And that's the fact that all human problems reside in the local brain. Unless, again, you're going to consider death as a problem. Every problem that you and any human can have rests in the local brain. There is a super peculiarity about it. It's impossible under any ordinary conditions for a person to think, for a person to see that their problem, whatever it may be, is in their local brain. It is in local reality. On numerous occasions over the times that the people who've been here longer have been here, I've tried to take swipes and hit and runs on the verbal map that I sketched for you of the delusion, the automatic proper, but I called it delusion on the basis that if this was a cure for an ill, that would be an ill, which this is not, and it's not. But it would be the delusion, without any thought, any analyzation, that everybody is at the center of everything. More succinctly, that you and all individual yous are at the center of everything. It's not a matter of egoism. It's not a matter of some kind of self-centered neurosis. It is not someone who necessarily appears to be vain. It is when you think of something, the act of using local intelligence puts you at the center of it. Trust me, I'm going to have to make it a little clearer, so don't let your eyebrows fall yet. But if people realized, if ordinary people could see that all human problems rest in the local brain, they are all a matter of local reality, all of them, it would seriously harm the living machinery of human life, of change and of growth. Let me see if I can give you some examples. The examples are simple. What I'm pointing at is not simple because it's in direct defiance of what ordinary intelligence, local intelligence, finds to be its limits, its backboard, its hoop shot, its jump shot, the way it's scored, what the game is. This is an absolute defiance of it, although it's simple enough for me to just pull out examples almost as much fast as I can talk. Your grandmother is sitting around, anybody's grandmother, of course. Some of you could even be your parents. But your grandmother is sitting around deploring the egregious, immoral state of modern life. Perhaps while you both are sitting there having tea and the TV's running and it shows some heinous murder, some helpless person, a child, a cripple or something, and then it's followed immediately by how many arrests were made on narcotics charges and how dangerous this particular city wherein you and your grandmother are sitting. At any rate, your mother, your grandmother, begins to comment on the deplorable state, the tacit in all such observations, message also being that things were better before today. You may be sitting there, let us say that you are somewhat weighted down, allowing yourselves, your own brain chemistry to get weighted down almost to that level. Not that it's your grandmother's fault, it's the level at which everyone should be operating. You can even feel within yourself that your own line level intelligence, your own local intelligence can sit right there and go, yeah. And there's nothing untoward about it. To nod along, at least silently or non-physically, when she says, can you believe what kind of humans do we have? That sort of thing didn't happen when I was growing up. Not only did you never hear of narcotics and crack or whatever that is, but I grew up and I was 42, 43 years old before I moved from cow chip here into the big city, before I was ever exposed to a murder. I'd read about them or heard people talk about that they'd seen them in movies or read them in books, but I had never actually been within somewhere that they said right down the street here somebody was murdered. And now, every day somebody's murdered. Your grandmother says that. Perhaps you are attracted enough, if you weren't watching it, to even float along with it and go, yeah. She is doing that while sitting in the midst of enjoying modern life, such as having a TV, such as being off the farm out of cow chip, having running water, which they didn't have there, electricity, the whole smear, which this is not here as a defense, and certainly not an attack on modern life, or Con Edison and all the many benefits of the electronic age. But if you ask your grandmother, which no one who understands anything would, but I'm just trying to get you to see the way energy flows, if you ask your grandmother, all right, with things, now remember your grandmother is also in your nervous system. Your grandmother is just also the more primitive side of you. So if you ask your grandmother and you say, well, you almost got me there, I was agreeing that is horrible. I agree it's horrible for a 5-year-old child to be murdered like that, for women to be attacked, for these dope dealers to be running neighborhoods. I agree, that's horrible. And the stories I've heard, the stories I can almost remember down my own nervous system, about the good bucolic days back on the farm and when people were nice to each other and neighbors helped one another. I agree, it sounds better. You almost got me. If I could change it right now, try hard enough and we physically could, but if I were to do that, would you give up everything that is? Now some of you got to be this good by now. You do understand. You may not like it, which means you don't understand it yet. You remember that Kyroots? Yeah, you may be right, but it still don't make me feel any better. Then you're just grasping at it, but you need to keep grasping. You do understand. It's not cause and effect. And three-dimensionally, this cannot be proven. Three-dimensionally, you can't really see it. It's just insane, although you can hear it. You do understand that at our day and time, to get the benefits, you're living longer, just ordinary people. You're living longer, you're healthier, there are less diseases. Life is easier, life is more pleasant on the ordinary level, but with that comes murders, dope deals right around the corner, children being raped and slaughtered, the elderly being mistreated and robbed, all of that. Now you don't understand anything if you can't get just a flash of this. It's not that one caused the other. There is no three-dimensional correlation that you can show local intelligence. The closest I can tell you in words, without stopping at a place I did not intend to hesitate this long, you can't have one without the other. Not those two things I mentioned, that is, let's say crime and technological progress. Let's just make it easy. When I say you can't have one without the other, I'm not referring to those two things. I'm referring to the way, non-verbally, non-identifiable, beyond labels, the way in which life is growing on this planet. Now, you call some of it crime. I know what it means. And you call some of it technological progress. And I know what that means. I know what you mean for it to mean. It is not that every time you have whatever technological progress is, and technological progress is not the words technological progress. No matter whose words it is, no matter what examples, it is a movement of life. It is energy. You cannot have that energy without this other energy in some way operating that you're calling crime. It's not that one causes the other, but you cannot back up if you could back up. You could not back up. No local intelligence could. No group of local intelligence could in some way say, well, here's where we made our mistake. I've never heard anybody try this, but if you had somebody that said, wait a minute, I can pinpoint within 2 days, back right in the final days of the initial Industrial Revolution, when things began to go awry. Now, if we could run back a time clock and we'd all jump in it, I could have us go ahead and have technological progress, and we wouldn't have this crime that seems to go along with it. Local brain, local intelligence cannot see beyond whatever it is stating. The local brain always properly puts itself in the center of whatever it's saying and thinking. It doesn't decide to. It has no alternative. It doesn't even see that it does it. But even if I could make an ordinary person see for a second that this is the normal state of affairs with the human nervous system when it talks. And if somebody for a split second that went, all right, I almost had it. I almost had a flash of what you mean, that every time I say something, it is like my little drawing again of the human nervous system, and like I am one stalk standing up here in the body of life. I'm a receiving and a broadcasting antenna, and I go out, let's say for the three-dimensional discussion, omnidirectional. But whatever I say, I got no choice. Whatever I'm saying, even if I don't put the words in, which you don't, what I'm saying is, according to me, according to my reality, no matter what it is, even if you're saying the obvious, if you're saying that is a styrofoam cup, you're also saying, although everyone may agree, you may be in that kind of cheap, fast company that'll all go, yeah, that's true. But you are saying, from my viewpoint, by my local intelligence, that's what it is. Local intelligence, local brain, properly puts itself at the center of everything, but it does not realize that the center of everything is local. Thus, there is no way that your grandmother, outside of you in your own nervous system, can see that you cannot separate that which they may view in good company as being a positive, an up, a good. They cannot see that you are dealing with a fragmented local version of reality to say that there is some parallel, some contemporaneous existing minus, negative, downside to it that ordinary intelligence tells you is separated. Now, I don't mean some, although this continues to pop up, I don't mean some vague, tenuous sociological discussion that art crime is in some way directed, connected to technological progress, because technological progress is, by its very nature, somewhat selective, because you've got to be well educated, you've got to be minimally educated to participate in it, and therefore the haves, more so than ever, are outstripping the have-nots, and then the have-nots rebel by falling into crime. I don't mean that. There is no way that ordinary intelligence can see that there is any connection And the connection is not that which you could even come up with at a local level, which would be something like I just went through. That is, the sociological connections between those who are progressing and doing better based upon technological progress and those who are not, and that's what produces crime. If they did that, do you see that the connection is still on the basis that over here you've got something, let's call it crime, and over here you've got technological progress over here. Even should an ordinary person, even should you, using ordinary intelligence, say, all right, there is some connection that you point out, or I see some of my own. I see a connection between the two. If you see a connection between the two, you don't see anything. Because it's not a connection between the two. As long as you believe that there is a connection between the two, as you're supposed to, then local intelligence tells you that things can be changed. It tells you that things could have been changed before it reached this sorry state. Because it's saying over here we have petunias and over here we have poison ivy or Jimson weed. And now they're growing together and one is threatening the other. That aren't we all in favor of nice petunias? And let's say that everybody at your time and place, more or less, except those in the juniper weed business, they all say yes, yes. And so you are apparently on very solid ground. That is the general way in which life is growing in your time and place. That everyone is in favor of the petunia crop. And then you, someone else's intelligence, points out, not incorrectly, that there is a growing danger from the Jimson weed. And let us say again that by and large, everyone there says, we agree. Something has got to be done. As long as you're dealing with the basis that there are two separate entities going on, two separate things in your reality, that there are the juniper flowers and the juniper weeds and the petunias, as you're supposed to, then you believe that something can be done. Disregarding, I must tell you new people, of the fact that on that basis, nothing can be done. Don't give you the blues. If that gives you the blues, you weren't sanforized and your curlers weren't all that stable before you got washed. Local intelligence, local brain, though, sees as it's supposed to, quite properly. There's nothing wrong. It's not some ill that I'm here purporting to cure. As long as it sees that things are separate, even when it apparently has made some intellectual progress, that it says, wait, these two manifestations, these two aspects of life are not operating in isolation. These two things are connected, as though that's some breakthrough. It's no breakthrough. It's the same thing. In one sense, any of you who... You got to jump almost to the 6D level now right quick. It's almost a stronger version of they have no connection. To say, wait a minute. I was going to let it go. A couple of you looking interested. Rather than an ordinary person that has almost no interest. The good old primitive side of you, the good old bricklayers and fifth grade educated people in you that hear some discussion, staying at the bar, the TV, they're hearing some panel discussion over what connection between progress and crime, technological progress, and you happen to look up, that side of you looks up and thinks, there ain't no connection. It's just dumb, dangerous, stupid people do crime. There's no connection. Or catch people that do crime, people that sell dope or hold up the stores or break in my car, they would get them and shoot them. What's that got to do with progress? Nothing. All right. At that level, things are just like they're supposed to be. The books are being cooked, the accounts are being churned, life is progressing. Things are alive. But at that level, it passes also for a more sophisticated, insightful view to let us say that now somewhere in you is a less primitive, or maybe in some way, if that's possible, we wise up, the one that I just pulled as an example, And then someday he has this great moment of intellectual epiphany. And he says, wait. Now I see why they're always discussing that kind of stuff that I used to laugh at. And he says, there is. And then let's say he lapses into that, floating along with that kind of thing, if there's some socio-logical connection, which is true enough. If they say it's true at the 3D level, I know what they're saying, and it is true enough. That he begins to see that that is not some sort of silly, intellectual, pointed-headed theory. There is a connection between our growing industrial and technological progress on the one hand, and on the other hand, it seems to be increasing violent crime that we didn't have when we were less progressive and advanced. That passes, as again it should, as some sort of progress. What I was going to try to say, you've got to really get beyond even the 4D level to see that for the operational purposes that's serving, those that see the connection really see less than those that see no connection. So I spent 3 minutes. There was about 2 people here I thought was going to get it, but no matter. Even if you see the connection, I didn't lose all of you, did I? Even if you see the connection, as you're supposed to, educated people, if you're just going to not ever get any better than that, if you're just going to be an educated person here on this planet, you're supposed to begin to see those kind of connections. Literally, metaphorically, but to see them. But to see the connections is not progress, because as long as you see the connections, you understand a connection literally implies that there are 2 things that you can identify somewhere, 2 pods, 2 nouns somewhere, but wait, they're connected, they're not separate. That doesn't say anything, because as long as they're still separate, yes, but connected, okay, we're connected. As long as that's true, then one of them in some way can influence the other, has influenced the other, probably adversely, as it appears at the local level. But as long as that's true, then all is not lost. As long as Jimson weeds are not in some way that the ordinary mind cannot even comprehend, as long as I can see and aware of the fact, and everybody else is, that there are Jimson weeds and then petunias, and then at least Soto voice, you say to yourself, if you're listening to all this and you're ordinary, don't tell me they're the same thing. I didn't say that. So as long as you can see, even if they're there taking up almost the same time and place there in your little plot, but as long as they are separate, as long as you can see that they are 2 distinct entities, then what is that which is being purported? For this ill there is a cure, because we can, I don't know whether I can, I don't know whether I got the time to or the interest, but somebody, well, I can theoretically, there's no doubt. Somebody can go out there and pluck out the juniper weeds, and therefore be a boon to the petunias, which we're all in favor of. And everybody goes, yeah. So, case settled. I may not have time right now. Maybe I will not live to see it done, but at least we can appoint a blue ribbon committee, and we can rearrange some of our taxes, and somebody look into this. Because there's the problem. I mean, I put it down for you. I've just stated the problem, which you knew, but now I've told you that as long as we can see that the 2, even though they're connected, something can be done. Now, I can't stick around and do it all, so I pointed out for you. Now, somebody establish a committee and set up a subcommittee and get all their relatives on the payroll and look into it. Now, I got to go. The itch that we'll assume that brought everybody to the place you are today, vis-a-vis fooling around with this, the itch is that there is no way that you can in any way expand, educate, sophisticate, urbanize, simonize, repatch, retread local intelligence and get anything else out of it. It can apparently, if any of you want to follow this, it's almost an aside, it can apparently, under ordinary city conditions, almost begin to see more and more connections. It's like having a bigger and bigger kind of picture of connect the dots, and if I get them all connected, then I will see what the hell's going on. But the picture never gets any clearer. What seems to be progress in some levels of ordinary life is, wait a minute, there are more dots than I imagined. Progress. Here's some more to connect. And you just never realize that, wait a minute, the picture is not getting any clearer. I cannot look at it, and it's, for a while I thought, well, wait a minute. The way these dots are looking, what it's going to be, it's going to be a silhouette of Lou Gehrig, or it's an impressionistic view of the Battle of Waterloo. And so you may think, well, I'm getting closer. But the picture never gets any better than that, and what passes for intellectual progress in life, in many cases, is, wait a minute, there's some dots I overlooked. And it's like they just more and more dots. But do you see? Some of you got to see. It gives the distinct local brain impression of movement, of tempo, increased speed, heat, excitement. Wait a minute, we're on to something now. Really? Yes, I see more dots. I thought I was getting down. I only saw, to tell you the truth, you might say to oneself, I only saw X number of dots left, maybe just a handful. In other words, it's getting kind of frightening that I'd spent all this time and I only saw 4 or 5 dots left to connect, and I'm going to tell you the truth. I still didn't know what the hell it meant. I'd look at it from all angles, and there's only 3 or 4 dots left. So as soon as I get them connected, the game's up. I've wasted my life. I'm going nowhere. But, I was wrong. I found 22 new dots. Do you follow? At any ordinary level, that is the impression, the distinct, the proper impression that I'm making progress. But you understand, if you can just, some of you are getting this good, if you can just push in your own brain, your own nervous system, right up to the corner of another dimension, you realize this is not literally true, but it's going backwards, but it gives the distinct impression that I'm going forward. Now, you're not literally going backwards, but that's the only way to describe it in words, of course, to give you any hint that, wait a minute, I still don't know what this picture means. The breakthrough is not that, wait a minute, now I do understand, I can see suddenly what it is. No, that hasn't changed. What changed is there's more dots. In other words, now I know more because I know less. You follow? In other words, I know more now because there are areas of ignorance. That is, the dots that I don't know how to connect yet. I've discovered new ignorance. Which is what? New intelligence. I got new knowledge. I got new information. I only thought that I was dumb up to this point, that I was ignorant up to this point. But no! I now realize there are even more things I'm ignorant of than I thought. That, of course, I don't think I can beat any more of you into seeing it. Enough of you got that. That is just another delightful example of the way life operates, and is not an ill to be cured. But you will never get past local intelligence, local time, local operations until you see such things as that. Let me give you a slightly different example, rather than your grandmother and the sorry state of contemporaneous life. A guy is either talking to another guy, or all this is going on inside of one guy. You guys know how to do that. And the guy is laughing that he just made a claim on his insurance policy for a theft. And now he's laughing to this other guy, to his other voice, that I ended up, whether he meant to or not, I ended up, and I got paid more than the stuff that I lost was worth. I mean, not a lot, but the point is, by me losing this, by me having this stolen from me, I actually turned a profit. I can go replace it and have some money left over. Quite valid local view. I'm not making any statement as you people getting this out on tape at other times and other places. It's got nothing to do with your cow chip Kansas morality or any morality of this planet. This is just what happens in life. It's a local view without any doubt. You cannot argue, as they say, with the numbers, right? That which you lost in the accident or the fire cost you X amount of money. It's what you paid for it. And through whatever happened to clerical error, or you misspoke when you were telling the adjuster about how much it cost, and nobody questioned it, and you got a check back, and the check is more, not only than you paid, but it's more right now than it'll take to go replace it. So by losing it, you made a profit. The numbers don't lie. All right. That is true. No doubt, no question. That is true at the local level. But now notice, it's just obvious as hell when I point it out. Without a universal intelligence, without a brain that can go past that which is true and proper and valid for you, the guy laughing about making a profit did not consider the fact that I've been paying premiums for 21 years. Don't hurt your head like there's something else to see. There it is. No one, if for some reason I was talking to ordinary people, an ordinary person could go, all right, yeah, I see that, so what? I mean, what's the point of all that kind of stuff? One voice, one line of energy, very small, I hate to say insignificant, so I'll say insignificant, in one person is laughing that I sort of had a problem. My car burned up and I lost a bunch of stuff in it, and I made a claim, and I felt kind of bad. I got the check and looked at it and realized I made a profit. There is local reality. But even an ordinary person, if I say, well, wait a minute, how can you say you made a profit? Have you ever made a claim before? No, it's first time. First time in my life. It's quite an experience, and I made money off of it. It's what's funny. That's, well, how long you had the policy? About 21 years. And then if I say, well, and then you might go, oh, I see. You're right, I've spent $38,000 to recoup this $520, of which 80 of it was clear profit to me. As always, if I must, you should be able to do it yourself sometimes, but do not scratch your head too strong that you miss a point, or do not laugh like, well, wait a minute, this is just some kind of joke at the stupidity of ordinary people. Nay, 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 nay. It's not. The first part, the guy laughing, having pleasure over the fact, and we're not begrudging him his pleasure, even if it was you, the fact that he made a profit over what was initially perceived as a loss. He made a profit. There is a piece of fragmented local reality. I'm not here, you're not here. No one has ever been here on this planet to say something's wrong with that. Now, notwithstanding the fact that this planet's full of people saying something's wrong with that. But notice, they say something's wrong with it on the basis this is an ill to be cured. That is, that shows the lax morality of our day and time. It's not an ill. It's a piece of pie that's never been described as being a piece of pie, because it seems to be a piece of pie, but the piece of pie is connected with the whole pie. I just don't have time to deal with the whole pie. Could you be a little more specific? All right. I can't think of the piece and the pie at the same time. Well, think about this. We're going to turn the tape over. Okay, listen up. I was going to say I'm getting behind, but how do you get behind when you're not going anywhere? All right, I thought I was getting behind. All right, now I'm over it. Now I'm all right. I just simply unthought it. The guy laughing, the human who is in the midst of being a part of humanity, which is in the midst of being a living organism, in the midst of a transmission, a continual transmission at many levels, can be identified on our planet, in our life, the transmission of energy. Beyond all that, it's all window dressing. It's all fine window dressing. It can be fun, it can be experimental, it can be theoretical, it can be enjoyable, it can be a hobby, if you understand it. For everybody else, it's serious business. It is a transmission of energy. So these examples, as always, I give, like your grandmother complaining about the morality of present life, or about the man laughing of how he made a profit over his loss. It is discrete packs of energy operating in quantum steps. I'm not trying to rip off particle physics, but it's what I've talked about in many kinds of ways. It is that ordinary intelligence deals, as it must, in sentences. You could not have words without letters. You could not have thoughts without a bunch of words. You could not have thoughts that seem to serve some significance, some purpose, unless they had a beginning and an end, which is a thought, a sentence. Hence, from a non-specific way, my continuing periodic attempt to get you people to refrain from dealing in periods. Don't even think about a period. But that's not a nil with ordinary life. In ordinary life, conversely, if you want to see it right quick, the backwards dynamics in action again. If I say don't deal in periods, don't ever believe that you came to the conclusion of something, or else you've cut off the possibility of seeing anything else. If in some way I could induce ordinary people to do that, what would I have done? I'd have driven several people, whatever the number was, crazy. Or at least those around them would say, Jesus, you're crazy. Ordinary life could not operate unless there appeared to be beginnings and ends of sentences, that thoughts had some purpose, that everything that's said purported to cure some ill, to right some wrong, to move something from here to there. Proper is the way it should be. But it is based upon not some kind of psychological era or the psychological basis of human intelligence or human personality or curses from the gods or anything else that you can name, because anything you name is still window dressing. Anything you name is still salad dressing, and it's still not the goodies in the bottom of the bowl. Anything you name is something other than the energy itself, and the energy operates in what, once you see it, appears to be spurts, cycles, packs, paquettes, herds and herdettes. But then it manifests itself like this. Back to where we were just a few minutes ago. This local intelligence, this guy says, broke my heart, car burnt down, and I had a bunch of stuff. Had a lot of value, sentimental at least to me, stuff anyway I liked, and filed my claim, got back more than it's going to cost me to replace it, made a profit. The guy went from here to there, my car burned down, filed a claim, made a profit over what I thought was a loss. Ha ha, period. Then, if it was pointed out to him, well, wait a minute. You made a profit, you said, of $80 here on this transaction, but for 21 years you have been paying $1,400 a year in premiums. That's a different thing. The ordinary person might, as I said, might go, well, all right. If you're going to put it that way, all right. For what purpose did that serve? He could then, if I pushed it, say, all right, I see the connection. I see what you're saying. You're saying that over a long haul, over a wider view of the matter, I did not make a profit. It's cost me, whatever that would be, $38,000 for me to get to the point that I lost $640 worth of stuff in my car, and I got back $810 from the insurance company. Did I make out like a bandit? All right, I see what you mean. If you're going to put it that way, I see what you mean. That if you're going to look at it that way, all right, I didn't make a profit. But you do. You got to hear me. That is not the way life works. Now, not just verbally. It would appear to be verbally, but it's more than that. It has to do with what I've told you are unrecognized laws of non-specific physics, but they're based upon such things as manifested in our life, that two entities cannot occupy the same space, for instance. I'm not going into that, but you can see this becomes true when you go around to the fourth and fifth dimension, which is what this kind of thing is based upon, really. All right. As far as the description goes, the guy made a profit. He lost $620 worth of stuff in the fire, and he got a check for $810. That occupies that piece of local reality, that's a fact. That's what happened. He's smiling. The smile, the laugh, the chuckle was the period on the sentence. There it is. Then he was asked to consider the fact, wait a minute, you have spent over the last 21 years dealing with this insurance company. You've made no claim and you have paid $38,000 worth of premium. And let us say that I get his attention, or he gets his own attention. He goes, well, that's true. So then this packet of energy, that is that piece of described reality, he can't question that. He knows it's a fact. He wrote the checks. Yeah, I've spent $38,000. Those two apparent pieces of information, those two apparent manifestations of reality cannot occupy in him the same space. Now, you could play this kind of verbal game and say, well, wait a minute. Don't you see that there's something sort of peculiar, or pick out some word, but doesn't it strike you curious that you were laughing and you were talking to me or somebody else about, boy, I made a profit over what should have been a loss. Made a profit. But you didn't. Oh, all right. But you see that they cannot occupy the same space. If they did, the person would not be dealing with local reality. Conversely, if they could do that, which they can't, they would then be touching upon universal reality. It's not just verbal tricks. It is the fact that whatever you believe, whatever you think is going on, whether it be apparently positive or negative. But the way you start, I was going to suggest tonight that whenever it's negative, whenever it seems to be a problem other than death, the problems are always coming from local brain. There are no problems that arise directly from universal brain. Put it to you another way. All problems, as you can see it, are a matter of fragments. Try it another way. If your grandmother, if the grandmother in you, if the primitive in you, and I just picked out two nameable spots, descriptions, that is, increasing crime and technological progress. If your grandmother could see not only all of that, not the connection, because they're not connected. I mean, it's not that these two things are connected. These two things are... If she could see that, do you understand that there would be no comment? She couldn't even think about crime. She could not think about progress. How are you going to describe the entirety of that painting? I am really playing with three-dimensional reality, but if you were going to describe it, it would be no description. Because if you're going to describe it through the senses, through the electromagnetic spectrum that constitutes the stimuli to our senses here, and that's it, Jack, then you have got to pick out something. You've got to say, God, don't you like that? Or conversely, don't you hate that kind of stuff? Well, why? And then you got to what? You got to localize it. You have got to turn it into a piece. You have got to say, well, I'll tell you one thing. Whoever did this, their attempted juxtaposition of that kind of free form based with the intrinsic deeper values of that kind of color coordination and combination on this side, that kind of connection, that kind of match is, to say the least, passé. You have said that there are two aspects at least that you're comparing the form and the color, making some critique or even a praise of it, but let's keep it the nice human way, a critique of it. You have got to say that there are two different things that you're talking about. But of course they're connected because they're all right there within the framework of that painting. But as long as you believe that there are two things, which ordinary local intelligence must, as long as there are two things, then they could be otherwise. But to say, well, the two things are connected because I know they're connected, they're on the painting, that's nothing. They're not connected. There is no human word for this. They're not connected, they are If you say they're connected, you've separated them. And by the separation is how things move on this planet. It is how things technologically, for instance, progress. Nobody could have invented magnetic tape or the television camera, the cathode ray tube, incandescent lights, unless they saw how things were separated. Thomas Edison, looking at all the kinds of filaments that people had tried, then he looked at one he'd tried or one that somebody there in his lab tried, and he saw these separate things, and then he went, if Edison said such things, Eureka! Then he saw how they could be connected. But how they could be connected is simply a continuing state of how things are separate. If Mr. Edison, for instance, had been plagued in some accidental way by universal consciousness, universal intelligence, he would have never invented the light bulb. Now, he may have perceived it, but he had never gotten around to it. He might never have gotten out of his chair. He could have sat there and invented the light bulb, the cathode ray tube, hush puppies, situation comedies. It is the fragmentation of local intelligence, in part, or from one description, that makes people move. Another peculiar aspect, or closer to the one I was going to mention, since we're really getting behind, I want everybody to be aware and feel the stress that we're getting very behind tonight. The fact that all problems are based upon local brain, local reality, does that not suggest, if you're following where I'm trying to pull you back to now, does that not suggest any potential? I'm talking about real potential. I'm talking about like right now use. Every problem, I'll just state it dogmatically, why not? I already did if you didn't notice. All human problems, singular human problems. You know, the problems unique to man, not the problems that you can get a thorn in your paw just like a lion, or that you can get rabies just like a raccoon. The problems that are unique to man all rest in, arise from, are limited to local reality. Since we are running out of time, I'm going to have to push forward in that great dogmatic manner. Do you understand what that imports? Other than your health. And the only question of that is you're alive or dead. Other than that, every other problem you got is based upon, is tied to, endogenous to, local reality. Do you see that the cure for, from one view, the cure for all so-called problems is to have in operation a universal brain? And you got it in you. Everybody's got it in them. You got both of them. There is no problem unless you're dealing with local time, unless you're dealing with local reality. And I don't care what it is. You're underappreciated, you're underloved, you're not respected, you're not famous. Anything other, what else have I got to mention? Let me make it the easy way. Other than health, life or death. Other than that, every other problem that you or anybody's got is based upon local reality. It is a manifestation of local brain. Now, if I could get some group of ordinary people in some way make that either more plain or more complex and bomb that point, and I said, I'm telling you, that's the way to cure everything. And if they went, all right, theoretically, I hear what you said, do you think that that would have any effect on anybody? No. Not that it's supposed to now, but would it? No. Because if they could even hear that, and if I were so dumb as to try and push that, then I'm going to make up. It'll make sense, but I'm making up because it wouldn't happen. Here's what it would strike them as. Well, wait a minute, you're saying that the cure for all problems then is to have a kind of universal outlook or universal intelligence. I go, yeah. And it's all right, and you're saying that every problem I've got, if it's not my health, then every other problem is due to the fact that I do not have this kind of universal brain in operation, that I have the potential for. And I said, yeah. Then they would think this, if all this scenario were possible. They would think, well, wait a minute. If that's the case, then I do not want to cure myself, because that would wipe out my whole fucking life. And at that local view, which is what they got, they're right. That's why it don't happen. They would become like a Thomas Edison. My example. That, well, I'd go sit down, and I'd probably never even get up except to go eat, maybe go get laid, if I got sick, maybe to go see somebody and say, can you make me unsick? But other than that, I wouldn't do anything. That's all you're describing. Back to, we would hope, people who can hear more than that. That is not the extent of it, although that would be a valid verbal verification of their view. For somebody that could use this, somebody could hear it, you got to get beyond that, because it is practical. It is practical if you can change your own brain chemistry enough to remember, enough to see it. You got to do first, not just remember it, but then to see and be able to keep that kind of rearrangement of your own brain chemistry, to have this continuing awareness that whatever it is going on, not theoretical, not from some attempted assumed view that you've taken from me or from somebody else, but that whatever you got, if it's not your health, whatever problem's going on, once you see it, if the problem's going on, it's because you allowed it to go on. If the problem's going on, it's coming from a local view. Because all you got to do is expand your view. All you got to do, assuming that you in some way can get your own universal brain cranked up at times, then you find out, whatever it is, I don't care what it is, leaving out health, leaving out death, whatever else it is, all I've got to do, if I can do it, is change gears from local brain to universal brain. There's no question, no struggle, no theory, no doubt. Just like that, it's gone. Just gone. It is no problem. And you tend to, brain-wise, smile. And of course, it's not even gone, because that would imply a connection between it being here and going. The universal brain, universal intelligence, has no problem. It's not possible. If there were problems that fall within the realm of what I'm describing of universal reality, then we're all done for. That is, life is engaged in involution and not evolution, which, I'll tell you again, if you've got any smattering of a potential of any real intelligence, then I don't have to preach on that. All you got to do is look around. All you got to do is look and feel in your own nervous system. Life is not shrinking. Life is expanding, regardless of what your local intelligence may tell you about the pitfalls of this kind of evolution and all the things that you don't care for. There is no such thing as a universal problem. There's just not. I can say that 2 or 3 times, but if you can get away from the hold of your own local view, it's not psychological, it's chemical. It is not spiritual, it's electrochemical. It is not egotistical, it is chemical. If you get away from that, that brain not only does not see problems, it sees that it's moot to even be talking about it, and blah, 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 blah. At that level, there are no problems. The only problem would be at the universal level is if the universe is dying, if life itself is dying. But everything else is the kind, in a more picturesque way that I used to describe, it is everyone standing here in the death queue and to kill time. If you'll accept that kind of pun. It's too late now, I guess you had to take it. Here you stand and you got what? My God, 60 or 70 years to stand here waiting to meet up with Mr. Hormel and Mr. Meyer and all those waiting on him. Alpo, maybe some of us. And there you stand, and what are you going to do for 60 or 70 years? Well, it'd drive you nuts, stand there for 60 or 70 years constantly thinking, Jesus, I'm a step closer. The line's go, you got to do something, right? You put on funny hats. I don't mean just lampshades and fezzes. You put on hats, mortarboards, and you say, I am now somebody. I have a profession. I'm going places. I'm richer. And in your time and place, it's like everybody plays house. You play doctor and nurse and husband and wife and get famous, and all the time the line's moving. At the universal level, if you got away from the line, even though you're still there in part, but if you got away from it, if your conception of it, if your intelligence of it was not local, then you would see that all the whining, all the crying that you and everyone has to do at that level is due to the fact that all they see is local reality. That the only way that the human nervous system can think at that level is in sentences. Reasonable sentences, logical sentences, meaningful sentences, sentences with which those around you concur. But it is local reality. I'll admit I didn't get as many of you pushed where I was hoping to get you tonight, because some of you should hear it, but let me try a fast one from the other direction again. Because I know that if you can't get past that point tonight, you hear all this as some sort of theory again, although you may have been around enough to take even that which sounds theoretical for me to heart and try to deal with it on a better basis at some other time. But remember, if you're not thinking now, you remember that? If you're not intelligent now, you ain't going to be intelligent. So you got to do it now. But let's try it the other way. Because it's not theory. It is reality here at the local level, and nobody can get away from it unless they see that it's local reality, that it's fragmented, it's piecemeal, and that there's something else. Look at it this way. All pleasure, all irreversible pleasure, the things that give pleasure that cannot just be taken away by somebody's word. I don't have to qualify it anymore, do I? What are the pleasures in life? The pleasures in life, the real ones, are not dining. That is a local pleasure. That is local reality. That is a hobby. The real pleasure is eating. Being in love can be a pleasure, people call it. And I am not, as you know, knocking in love. I don't know whether you know that, but I'm not. But being in love is a local reality. That's not the pleasure. The pleasure is fucking. The rest of it is once you're through, you're back in line. Well, you're in line anyway, but you tried to pull the shades for a few minutes, I guess, if you're a civilized sort. But you can't do that forever, it seems. And so a few minutes later, there you and your partner or other people are. And then you've got to go back to the hobbies of discussing love. And all the... It is the secondary aspects wherein so-called human problems lie. But it is at the secondary level wherein humans are being made the greatest use of as the openings of energy coming out, is why it seems to be problems, because nobody likes to be the open end of a hose. And that's what we are. Well, that's what you are. You are the hole. Remember the little pinhole in your own particular little finger, this huge, gigantic, unbelievably sized rubber glove that's full of all this creation goo, and when it comes out, it tends to irritate people. Your nervous system stays irritated because it is a living transmitter, a transformer, a conductor. It can change. You can be a capacitor. You can be all sorts of electronic gear. But the point is, energy is flowing through you. And if you're only dealing with local brains, local intelligence, everybody, as they're supposed to, takes the energy quite personally. They also take the energy to be them. Well, since you bring it up, I'll tell you what I think. And the person does it. Your nervous system does it. Like, I'll tell you what I think. And all it is the hose is still on. And it's your turn. You open your mouth and your brain, it goes, well. If that's not true, you people out there that's newer to this, then I got to ask you this. If that's not true, then be sure and write me, and I'll refund your box tops, and I'll send you. Tell me what you're going to say next. Case closed. Except that didn't close people's cases, does it? It took a long time for that to have any effect on your case. A universal intelligence. God, I'm sure I don't know who, but somebody, some crackpot, no offense to you crackpots, but out there on tape. But some mystic, some New Age writer, even if it was 5,000 years ago, somebody said universal intelligence. It just fully struck me. Somebody said that. It just shows that plagiarism can run in reverse, because they got it from me, but I just thought about it. It is an intelligence that is not focused in the ordinary fragmented way. It's not a trick, and it's not that everyone else, that your ordinary level, and you and everyone else, that your intelligence is amiss. But you should be able to see, I pointed out enough examples, and I've done it before, of your grandmother, a more primitive, fearful side still in your nervous system, does not see as they denounce manifestations, aspects of life as it is in this time and place, while enjoying life as they're supposed to at this time and place. Were it not for things being as it is at this time and place, that part of you or your grandmother could not be sitting there condemning the other part, because it's not two different parts. It's not only not two different parts, they're not connected. There's not some part of that painting connected. It's just that damn painting. But if you're going to fall back to local intelligence, as you're supposed to, if you're ordinary, and you say, well, don't give me all that kind of hypothetical BS. The things are connected. Right there. That red form is connected to that green part. There are connections in there. All right, you got me. But they're not. I'm trying to give you a material metaphor for the fact that there it is, and to say that there are parts of it connected are true enough, but to do that you are dealing with that which will keep you where you are forever, which is fine. I mean, it's fine by me. That you are now dealing with a local view of it. But it could be an excellent local view. You could be one of the better known art critics, or just one of the better known intelligent people on this planet, to say, well, all this kind of stuff you're talking about is just insanity, or else it's some kind of theoretical twine that I don't care to get entangled with, because I know it's a painting, but there are things in there connected. There are things in everything connected. In the back of a TV set, in a computer, in an automobile, in the body, there are things connected. You've got to see it that way. That is local intelligence. That is ordinary intelligence. But the very thing that all this is about, and the thing that those of you properly drawn to this, the place where you're itching, is that local views, local intelligence, no matter of what level it is still local, and you cannot ever expand it in some way that it will cease to be local. That is, you cannot in some way expand it or to start putting the dots together and it make any more sense. What will pass for progress is, I found more dots. Not that I've got an answer, but by God, I'm getting somewhere, because now I got more questions. Just consider that all pleasures, where I was for a moment, all pleasures are universal. But people would not be operating as they do. People would not be people. Humans would not be humans if in some way this knowledge were suddenly implanted in people. I suddenly could make everybody go, wow, I see exactly what you're talking about, and they did, if that was possible. I would have done a tremendous disservice to humanity, because I can't do it, but I would have killed everybody. I would have stopped life. But consider that the pleasures are of a universal nature. And what may be quite interesting, valid, nothing wrong with it, hobby for you, is always, for you and everybody, is always a secondary version of a universal pleasure, of a primary pleasure. There is no pleasures that in some way have just sprung like Aretha and not Franklin from the great forehead. They just suddenly, oh, here I am, a unique human pleasure with no progenitors. I have a hobby that I made up. I've got an interest in life that just, I'm my own Zeus. It just sprang from me. Write and tell me about it. Don't bother. I don't need any more nutty letters. There is no such thing. And to converse the conversely again, or to withal the withal again, that which seems to be problems. And by problems I mean whatever irritates you, to whatever degree. It can never be of a universal kind. There is no such thing as annoying sex. Now, I know that people have tried to start the sex act, or be in the midst of it, or at least trying to start with somebody, and think, boy, I wish I was somewhere else. You are dealing with local reality. You are dealing, you and the other person will assume, local reality had a stronghold on both of you for you to get that close. So you're not dealing with sex there. Nobody has ever eaten food, unless they were dealing with secondary reality and got the food that did not agree with them, or were trying to eat tennis shoes. But no one who was hungry has ever eaten and then went, boy, God, I hate eating. Or that's the worst eating I've ever done in my life. I'll never eat again. The pleasures available on this planet are from the universal reality. They are a manifestation of it. They cannot be reversed. They cannot be codified, conditioned. And if they are, which I know they seem to be with people, that people do say, I wish I hadn't eaten that. I wish I hadn't gone to that place. I wish I hadn't associated with those people. I wish I hadn't gone to bed with that person. They can say that, but they're now dealing with the secondary manifestations of it. It is now a local view. It is only a local view that will put you in the position, and it's only a local view that once you're there, go, I don't like being here. I do not like being the red piece. I do not like being the yellow circle. We're so far behind, I just should give up. How much time we got? 10. Sure does make me want to preach, though, not having 10 minutes, because this is right at the heart of what some of you should be able to almost triple over and to not just see, but to have a real effect on your own brain chemistry. Several tapings back, I gave you the little idea, and I talked about it some, almost when I started using the descriptions of wet and dry brain, that you should think to yourself biological, not psychological. Let me see if I can pull at that for a minute, connected to this. When I said that, and hinted enough, and some of you surely put it together yourself, it's not you simply trying to think biological instead of psychological, because your thinking is biological. What you're attempting to do is to think to yourself that what I'm thinking right now is biological. It's not psychological. It's not to simply think the word biological. It's to think this whole sentence. It's to think that, hey, what I'm thinking right now, whatever it is, that was parenthetical, whatever I'm thinking is biological. The fuel for whatever you're thinking is universal. If you're not aware of that, then what you're thinking becomes local. That which was wet and yucky, perhaps, gooey and formless, now, as it should, has form. Because now, by God, I can talk, I can think. And I know more than to have some nut tell me that the things in that painting are not connected. I'm not dumb. I can see that. All right, we'll try it another way. What we got? 7 minutes? 8. Oh, here's one. It's what I was just doing. Was that universal or local? Now let's see if I can see if I can find another way to put this. Does that seem to be a problem? Perhaps not world shaking, but I'm saying, well, it's not working as good as I thought. I haven't been able to get it over. See, how will I do it? Is that not some sort of problem? Is it? All right, let's try it another way. How about that great area of whys? W-H-Y. Can't pluralize why. I'll do it the cheap way. W-H-Y apostrophe S. That is, there's one why and then some more why, and another why. Can you see? This will really be fast if I won't give the history of why in 6 minutes. Whys are supportive. They are follow-up attempts for people to alter the brain chemistry and it's coevally an admission by man of the stodgy, near intractable genetic condition of his brain chemistry. It's both of them. After you have given directives to somebody, it is normally, you can generally count on, it's going to be followed up as to why. To give somebody directions, somebody working for you, somebody that you care for, that you're giving selfish, good advice to, what you're attempting to do is you're encouraging them, you're trying to get them to change their brain chemistry. Now you'll say, well, you should give up drinking, or you should work harder. Well, what you're trying to do is not just their behavior, which you may say, well, I'll accept that, especially they're working for them. I don't care, I just want their behavior changed. But then the more locally sophisticated you are, it's not just that, because if in some way you cannot impress upon them this, if you just say, look, I'm going to fire you if you're late again. You've been late every day since you've been working here. If you're late again, I'll fire you. If it's just that, he may come in early or on time tomorrow, and the next day be late again, and so you say, all right, I told you, and you fired him, and what good that do? Now you got to do his job before you find somebody else. So what people want to do is to change the brain chemistry. And so you say, look, I know 7:30, maybe early in the morning, to be here. But now look, I'm going to tell you, I know we don't open until 9 or 4. But look, I'm going to tell you why we got to be here. I'm going to tell you why I'm here. 8 hours before we open for business. I want to tell you, sit down, man. It's not just me hollering at you and saying you got to be here just because I'm some kind of crude martinet trying to jerk you around just because I'm the boss. I want you to understand there's a reason why we've got to be here working at 7:30. You're attempting to change the brain chemistry. To tell somebody, your child, your lover, to say, look, God damn it, you've got to quit smoking. Let me show you the latest statistics. Let's go down to the hospital and watch people spitting up their lungs. So you're not just saying, I want you to quit, because the person says, well, maybe I should, but I can't, or I just don't fool with it. Look, why I'm telling you this is because I love you. Why I'm telling you this is, it's not just because I don't like it. You're now attempting to change their brain chemistry. But all whys are also this. They're an unrecognized admission of the near, say I in my understated way, impossibility of changing brain chemistry. So, the admission is hidden in there is to say, if you told somebody, do you realize you should quit smoking? The person says, yes. That should be the end of it. Unless you want to try to back up three-dimensional and say, well, the person should never start smoking or drinking. Or they should not walk around having as their hobby taking broken pieces of glass and sticking it in their ear. They should see, well, it'd be my benefit not to do that. And somewhere in backward history it would have been their benefit not to have picked up that questionable habit. But so the admissions as to why, I mean, the admission I'm saying is hidden behind one person telling another one why they should do it, is a tacit, an unrecognized admission that it's almost impossible to change brain chemistry. That's why let's talk about why. We're now talking again another version of the dry brain. The local brain still peering over the edge down into the universal brain, realizing the near impossibility, but still dreaming about what if I could jump in there and actually grab my own genes. Not just you, but his life at a lower level. But consider it humans, looking into their own genetic pool and dreaming, pondering, while admitting, I ain't going to jump in there. Are you? No. Well, and also the admission is, even if I did jump in, it ain't going to do no good. But they all dream. See, as long as you don't jump, you can say, well, if I did jump and I didn't die, I didn't drown, then you might be able to change things in the other genes around you, like other people, or some of the other genes in your own brain chemistry may go, sounds good to me. Sounds reasonable. Sounds possible. But nobody can jump in. Nobody does jump in. If they do jump in, you never hear from them again. But one way not to jump in, one way not to jump in and not to be ashamed, one way not to not jump in and not have it noticed, is for everybody to talk about why. Now, since we've got 1 minute, now consider how it is that you apparently in your own local reality deal with you and all forms of change. Which all that kind of form of change is always on a local level. It's always secondary change. That's all you're ever talking about. But notice, you are full of whys you should do it. And if you're not, you'll go out and pay somebody. You'll go to a sales seminar for somebody to tell you why you should work harder. You'll go to a priest or a rabbi and pay them to tell you why you should stop certain things. When you're not, you can't. He can't. She can't. They can't. But as everybody's staying around like they cut off the top of the skull, and everybody looks down into the genetic wet brain of life, the universal brain of man, and everybody ponders, some of them talk about it, but everybody dreams. That's part of the energy. It's running through you, and everybody dreams about Jesus. The scope of that, the possibilities, if we could jump in and actually change it. What would you change? Well, I'd do so-and-so. And I'll tell you why. All right, you tell me why, and I'll tell you why. Or I should change, but I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to do it today. We are out of tape. We're out of public tape. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you and your public people are probably not out of your ability to hear more of this.